In this tutorial I want to show how to create simple stylized water. This water has everything we need. So first of all, it's different color for the bottom part of the water, middle sized and the edge of the water. Also here we have some waves and foam that we can adjust. Also we have some ripples on the water surface. And if we take a look closer here, as you can see, we have a refraction effect when the underwater parts are a bit deformed. So let's start working on this material. First of all, we need to ensure that distance mesh are turned on. To do this, go to Settings, Project Settings, and type here distance. Go to Lighting tab, and Generate Mesh Distance field should be turned on. When you do this, you need to restart the engine, and then we can continue. Because I already have it turned on, I will not restart an engine now. So now I can show you the material. It's look like this. It's quite simple, and now we can start working on it. Okay, I will create one new one. Right mouse button click, and let's create material. Let's name it Water 2. You can just leave Water. And first of all, let's set up the material by itself. So first of all, we need to change blend mode to translucent, and also we need to turn on two-sided. What next? We need to go here to translucency. Let's click here, screen space reflection, turn on, and in lighting mode, let's change it to surface translucency volume. Here it is. And that's all set up that we need to do before we start. Okay, and now let's start from the base color. First of all, let's create two color nodes. Press 3 on the keyboard and click on the empty space. Then click right mouse button, click on this node and convert it to parameter. And let's name it watercolor. Let's change the color to the light blue. Like this. And then Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V this node. And let's rename it to watercolor depth, because that will be the bottom color of the water, and let's make it a bit darker and blue. So, and now let's create a depth fade node. Right mouse button, click on empty space and depth fade. Here it is. Now press S like snake on the keyboard and click on the empty space, and we will create parameter node. And let's type here fade distance. And let's plug in it to fade distance. And now let's click 1 on the keyboard and create another parameter node, but we don't vector 1 node. And then let's change the default value to 1. Now right mouse button click and let's create cheap contrast node like this, and again S on keyboard and an empty space, create one more parameter node, and let's rename it to depth fade contrast, and let's change the default value to 0.5 and plug in it here. Now let's create LERP node. To do this, press L on keyboard and an empty space and plug in this to alpha, this to B color, and this to A color. That's all we need to work with the color. And I also want to add one more LERP node, because we will need to change the foam color in the future, but we will add it a bit later when we create everything related to the foam. But now let's create one more LERP node, L and plus on the empty space. let's plug in this to A. To B we will plug in the foam, and let's duplicate this Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V color node and rename it to foam color. And let's make it white and plug in it to B like this. And now we can plug in it to the base color. So that's everything related to color, and let's comment it. Press C on the keyboard and then an empty space, and let's rename it to color. And now we can start working on everything related to the foam. It's the most challenging part. Okay, let's start from the absolute world position node, right mouse button click, and let's type absolute. Maybe better to type world position. And as I remember, it should be somewhere here on the top. Here it is, world position. Next node, distance to nearest surface, and let's do it like this. Next we need to create divide node. Press D on the keyboard and click in the empty space, and let's create parameter node S and click on the empty space, and let's name it foam out distance. And let's change default value to 100 and plug in it here. Next, let's create saturate node. After that, we need to create add node. Let's press A on the keyboard and click on the empty space. Plug in it to the A. Okay, now we need to create a few more parameters nodes for to regulate the foam speed and to regulate the amount of foam lines we will have. To do so, let's press S on the keyboard and rename it to speed of foam lines and change this parameter to 4. Let's duplicate it, Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, and rename it to amount of foam lines. And change the default value to 1. Now let's multiply this node. Click on keyboard, and like multiply, and click on the empty space. Okay. Now let's create divide node. Click D on the empty space, and here we will plug in to B, and now we need to create node time. Let's type time and plug in it to A, and then plug in it to add node. After that, let's create multiplied node, M, and click on empty space, plug in this to A, and then this parameter, amount of foam lines, we will plug in to B. And now let's create node scene. Let's type scene, here it is, and plug in it to the scene. Now let's create node 1 minus, and we need to plug in this saturate node to 1 minus node. And now let's create one more multiplied node, M, and click on empty space, and plug in them inside of them. Then we need to create one more saturate node. We can just duplicate this one, Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, and right mouse button click and create round node. Let's type round, and now we need to create another node to basically this part give us everything we need to have nice round foam lines, but to make them look better, I decided to add one more thing, to mask some parts of the line so they look better. So in this stage, let's save our material. And because for masking we will need one more texture, we will go to Substance Designer to do this. Let's wait while material is saved. Okay, so I will show it here. As you can see here from the top, this part is more visible, this part is almost empty. Here we can see the waves again. In this place we almost don't see the waves, and all these gaps is made by the mask texture. So, and also it's make these waves less repetitive and look nicer, like this, as you can see I have here and also here, and this part is more visible. Okay, to do so we need to create the noise texture like this. For this purpose I use Substance Designer. I open Substance Designer and I click New Graph, Metallic Roughness. I will leave everything as it is, maybe change the size of the texture to 1K, press OK. Default template is more than enough. Now I will go to Library, Texture Generator, Noises, and here I need to find a nice texture. For this mask you can try different grunge textures, different masks, because they will give different effects of this transition between the parts you can good see and the parts you can't see. Because here I use a very smooth mask, and I have this transition smooth, but if you will choose another grunge mask you will have another effect for this transition. So as I remember, for this purpose I use a Perlin node, and I change the scale to something like this. I plug in it to base color, and that's basically all I need. Then I need to go to Explorer to my package, right mouse button click, export output. Here I need to leave format Targa, and we need to export only base color. So I will export to my desktop. Okay, let's create a new folder. I have here a water folder, and I will export it here. Export done. So now I can go to tutorials, water, and here's my texture. So I open Unreal Engine and will just drag and drop my texture here. And as you can see, it's replaced my previous texture because I did not change the naming. Let's change the naming and export it again. Okay, the water for mask. And let's drag and drop it again. Open this texture, and we need to change the compression settings to masks, no sRGB, and save it. And now we will use it with our water. As you can see, with changing of this texture, the mask on the water has also changed. Okay, let's open our material again. And now let's take our mask texture and just drag and drop it here. Right mouse button click on it, and let's convert it to parameter, and let's name it form mask. So we need to create one more world position node. Parameter node S, and click on the empty space, and let's name it form mask scale and change it to 2000. Now we need to create divide node D, and click on empty space, and let's plug in it like this. Now, if we plug in it here and then to the other node, that will have an error because we need to use only float 2 component. For do this, we need to mask one of the channels and leave only 2. Let's create a component mask node and leave only R and G, like this, everything for default settings, and plug in it to UVs. Okay, now let's create chip contrast node. Plug in this here, and let's create parameter node to change this contrast parameter S and click on empty space and rename it to form mask contrast. And change this parameter to 0.2. Now we need to create multiplied node M and click on empty space, plug into A and create one more parameter node. Now we will regulate the form contrast because it's contrast of the mask and now of the form S and empty space, and rename it to form contrast. And the default value we will change to 0.5. Now we need to combine these two parts in one. To do so, we will use multiply node M and click on empty space, this to A and this to B. And now we can plug in this mask to the alpha of our color part, like this. And let's save our material to do not lose all our changes. And now we also will comment this part to not forget. To do this, press C on keyboard. Oops. And change the size of it like this and change the name. Let's name it Shoreline. And we can bring it a bit closer here. So, and now we need to create specular, roughness, opacity, and refraction parts, and also normal parts. And let's start from the roughness specular. First of all, let's create lerp node, L, and click on empty space, and plug in this part like this here. Let's create parameter node S and click on empty space and name it to roughness. And change this parameter to 0.9. And create vector1 node. Press 1 on keyboard and click empty space and change the default value of it to 1. And now let's create node 1 minus. Right mouse button, click on empty space and type 1 minus. Plug in it here. And now we can plug in it to roughness and specular like this. And also comment it, press C and rename it to roughness specular. So next step, let's work on normal. To do so, let's create texture coordinate node. Divide node, D and click on empty space. And also let's create parameter node and name it normal mask scale. And as you already understand, we need a texture for this purpose. And to do so, we can return to Substance Designer. And here we also can find something interesting. Maybe we can use even this part. So let's plug in it to normal. And we can increase normal intensity, press spacebar and type normal intensity. Plug in it like this and increase normal a bit. Maybe this part. Yeah, I think we don't need normal intensity. Let's leave it as it is like this. And maybe we can change the scale of Perlin node to have it like this. That's okay. And now we can right mouse button click here, export outputs, and now we need only normal. Click export, go to the folder we have, and let's rename it to foam water normal mask. Open Unreal Engine. And now we can just drag and drop it here. Let's open it and check that it's normal map. That's okay. Now we can take this texture and drag and drop it to our scene. Also, experimenting with this normal texture will also give you different results of these nice ripples on the water. Okay, let's come back to our material. Right mouse button click on this texture and let's convert it to parameter and rename it to normal mask. Now we want to move this texture on the surface. To do this we need a panner node, panner, and plug in it to coordinate and this to UV. And now we need to create parameter node to regulate the speed of movement. To do this, click S and click on empty space and rename it to normal speed and plug in it to the speed and change the default value of this node to 1. And also we want to regulate the intensity of the normals on the surface. To do this we need to use Notter flatten mask. Flatten normal node, here it is, plug in it to the normal, and then to regulate flatness we need to create one more parameter node. To do this, click S on empty space and rename it to normal flatness. And let's change the default value to 0.5. Then we can plug in this to normal. Comment it, C and click on empty space. And rename it to normal. The last thing we need to make is refraction part, but if you don't need it, you can even leave it as it is. So let's save our material. Oh, and also I forget about opacity. That's important part. Okay. So let's create LERP node. To do this, click L and click on empty space. And now we need to create parameter node. Click S and click on empty space. And let's rename it to reverse refraction. And leave the default parameter as 1 and plug in it to A. Now let's create one more parameter node, S, and click on empty space and rename it as refraction. Click it to B and change the default value to 0.8. And now we need to create node two-sided scene and plug in it to alpha. and plug in this to Refraction. Let's comment it, press C on empty space. Change the size and rename it to Refraction. And the last thing we need to do is opacity. So for opacity, okay, I will do it here. First of all, let's create parameter node S and click on empty space, and let's name it depth, fade, distance, transparency. Depth, fade, distance, transparency. And change the default value of it to 500. And create a vector1 node, click 1 and click on empty space and change the default value to 1. Now let's create depth fade node. Plug in 1 to opacity and find distance to this node. Then we need to create clamp node. Right mouse button, click on empty space and type clamp. Plug in this to the top. And let's create one more parameter node S and click on empty space and rename it to translucency. Transparency, sorry. And change the default value to 0.5. And plug in it to not to max, to min value, that's important. And that's all we need for opacity. Let's comment it. And rename it as opacity. And then plug in it to opacity. So that's all we need to have for this material. Let's save it. We can close it, and now let's create material instance. Choose this material, right mouse button, click create material instance. Let's rename it MI water 2. I will apply this material to water that I already have in my scene. As you can see, the appearance has changed, and now we will set up our material. So as you can see now, all my parameters are mixed up, they don't have any groups. So I suggest you to return to our material again, and let's create groups. So our material instance will look like this, and it will help us to work with material in the future. Okay, let's open our material again and go here. So first of all, let's create group color. Select this node, and in parameter group, let's type color and change the priority number to 1. Then the second node, change to color and set priority to 2. And the foam, let's select the group color and change the priority to 3. So that will be color group. Now let's create a Shoreline group. To do so, let's select first parameter foam out distance and create the group Shoreline and change the priority number to 1. Then select the second parameter, select priority 2, then choose Shoreline, set priority 3. Foam mask scale, choose the Shoreline and set parameter 4. Then choose foam mask contrast Shoreline 5, foam contrast Shoreline 6, and also foam mask Also, do not forget to choose Shoreline and choose the priority 7. So that's the Shoreline group. Now let's create roughness specular for one node group. Let's name it roughness and change priority to 1. Now let's create fade distance group. Select this node and let's name group fade distance and set priority number to 1. Then choose fade distance constraint node and select group fade distance and set priority number to 2. Also, let's go to opacity and choose the depth fade transparency node also to this group fade distance and priority number 3, and transparency also group fade distance and third priority number 4. So what else left? Now we need to create a group for normal map. So normal map scale, let's name group normal and set priority number 1. Then normal speed, let's choose group normal and priority 2, normal flatness and priority 3, and also normal mask, group normal and priority 4. Okay, and the last group for refraction, choose the first one, rename it to refraction, priority to 1, and the second node to 2. And that's all. Let's save our material. And now when we will open our new material instance, as you can see, now we have everything sorted and that's look much better. So now we can turn on all these parameters and start setting up it. So as I told you, you can experiment with normal and foam mask. I don't know, we can do it now as a test. For example, okay, let's take, I don't know, this one. Maybe this one. Let's make normal less intense, like this. And let's create node blur, blur HQ grayscale, and blur this node a bit. Now we can export outputs by color and normal. Go to our folder and let's rename it to foam mask 02 and normal mask 02. Open Unreal Engine and just foam mask 02 and normal mask, and just drag and drop it here. And don't forget to change the compression to mask noise RGB on the base color. So let's set up our material and then we will experiment a bit. So first of all, color. As you can see, we can change the color. As you can see, after changing the watercolor to pink, nothing changed. This is because I saw that fade distance parameters is set to 0. Let's return to our material and change this fade distance parameter to 600 and save this material. Now, when we will return to our material, as you can see, pink color became visible. So the pink, the first color, it's the actual color of the water. So we can leave it, for example, green. And the another color, it's the bottom water color. Okay, let's leave it blue as it is. And now we can go to fade distance parameter. So fade distance, it's a parameter that regulates the depth of the water that reflected by color. So let's leave it as it is. Depth contrast, it's how smooth the transition between the depth and mid water color is going. Then depth fades, distance, transparency, it's how transparent the water is. So as you can see, let's leave it something in the middle. And transparency, it's the parameter that shows how much transparent is water near the border. So as you can see now, it's almost invisible, and now we can make it almost not transparent. So let's leave it transparent, something like this. So now we can go to the normal. As you can see, we don't see any ripples because the normal mask scale is very small, and when I change this parameter to 1, we start to see this. Let's change it to 0.5, and then we need to regulate normal speed. Let's change it to 0.01, and normal mask scale. As I understand, we need to go from what I see, this side is optimal for this texture, but it also depends on texture you have. And also we have parameters normal flatness. If you will set up this parameter to 1, we will not see any ripples, but if you change this parameter, you will start seeing them. And if we change the texture, for example for this one, this effect will also change, as you can see. But previous one works better for me. So what else? Now we can go to the foam part, and let's adjust it. So foam out distance, it's the distance when the water, when the foam starts. For example, the bigger is distance, the bigger distance foam starts. So let's make it a bit smaller because it's too much. Okay, let's leave it as it is, 100. We can change the speed of these lines. For example, 2, they will we will see them faster. Maybe 6, they will be smaller. Amount of lines, I like to have more lines. For example, 4 lines. Then foam mask scale, it's as you can see, now we start masking some parts of the foam, for example like here. So we need to find the best size of this mask to mask as much as we want. And now we can also set up contrast. As you can see, now we see everything, but when we create this parameter, the mask became more obvious. And also, if we want to have this transition more contrast, we can also play with foam contrast. With high parameter, everything became more visible, but I like to have it smooth as it was before, like this. So as you can see, it masked here, here, but now we can change the texture as well for this one. And now we need to adjust the contrast and the scale of the mask. For example, like this. So now this transition is not so nice. But anyway, you can experiment. I will return everything as it was before. And refraction I will not touch because the full parameters works good, but as you can see, everything is working. So that's basically all I wanted to show. I wish you good luck with your water material, and goodbye.